Hello, this is Prisma Lopez-Marin here on 18 WJTS with our conversations on Mondays. We are here with Town Manager Chris James. Hello.
Hello, Prisma.
Thank you for having us here.
Glad to bring you back with the sunshine today.
Absolutely. We would like to speak regarding some things that are happening in Vernon, and if you could give us an update regarding the phosphorus situation.
Right now, we're actually seeing some forward progress on it. For a lengthy period of time, we were sort of at a deadlock a little bit. We had submitted various paperwork and forms to the state, to rural development, for their approval. It's just one of many steps in the process, and we were just basically waiting for the official go-ahead on certain documents to move from one office to the next. And about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, we finally received word that a couple of our forms had moved forward. They'd gotten the sign-off from the engineer on the project, and that allowed the bonding obligation, the monetary part of the process, to also take a step forward. And we found out back on May 6th, we were officially obligated for funding for the project, which has been a long time in coming. We're solidly into the second year now of the process. It was a 3-year window when all of this came about with our NPDES permit back in 2014, and now we basically have about a year to go to get the funding taken care of, get the project bidded, get the bonding set up for the actual payment of bills and such, and get construction going and completed. We are continuing to work a couple of tracks at the same time, one dealing with the financial aspect and the other dealing with the actual behind-the-scenes process on getting final plans submitted to the rural development. We did one set of plans in the preliminary phase, and we are having another meeting this week to put the final touches on that, get that finished, sent to Indianapolis again for review. And once that is done, that will make it possible for us to start bidding out the project, getting all of that done. So we're anticipating a very busy summer of activity related to the phosphorus project, both with the activity that will be at the plant to deal with the chemical treatment for the phosphorus, and then also the side effect of that, which is the additional sludge, which is where the biosolids facility, our drying beds, come into play. So we're working several lanes of traffic, and they'll eventually go from 6 lanes to 4 lanes to 2 to 1, and then after 1 lane, we hope to be done. Roughly this time next year, we look to have hopefully the finishing touches going on all aspects of it, specifically with the drying beds phase of it, and be up and functional. State's happy, we get our permit renewed, and go forward from there. So we are starting to see forward progress on that.
And in terms of not getting anything situated in terms of the situation, what happens if it doesn't get accomplished? What's the issue with the phosphorus?
It will get done. There's no alternative to not finishing it. So that part, it's not a matter of will it get done, it will. Just sort of fine tuning the official date. The permit, I think, specifies by, I think it's May 1 or June 1 of 2017 is when construction should be substantially completed. Some of the timing process through this project, it took us a period of time, several months, to get our engineering firm put together. We actually changed consultants and engineers on that early on in the process, and so we had to redo some things, and then some of the timing, some of the documents we turned in, they just kind of were in Indianapolis, sort of in a static form. They weren't really moving forward or backward, so we had to wait and wait, basically. And we're still able to do some other work as much on the side as we could. The property itself, there was going to be a point in time where we would have to remove the timber from that site. The Indiana bat season made that tricky because from April 1 to October 1, that is when they are in their habitat there. And so we could not go in and touch the trees in that time frame. Last fall, after October 1, we got in and actually did the work ourselves. We worked with a private company, a local forester, to let us know what trees were what, which ones were best for sale, which ones just sort of a firewood or a pulp pile in a sense. So we went ahead when the window was there to take those down. We did that ourselves. That saved us a step in time. If we had waited until we got into this window, it couldn't happen until after October, so we would get other things done, and then we would have to wait for that to happen. So we tried to be proactive in that respect. We've had IDEM inspectors out checking the property, making sure erosion control is set up for us. They're very pleased with the silt fence that we have up and a lot of the measures we have taken. They offered us a couple of tweaks to make it work a little bit better, and we're implementing those this week yet to make sure we keep IDEM happy on that. But we're a step ahead from that standpoint, so that once the time comes to get out, start pushing dirt and getting things built, that part's already done. We won't have to worry about hurry up and waiting again to take the trees down. That part's done. So that was a step in the right direction there. And now we're just in that process of waiting for rural development. The funding is there. We still have to get some documents signed off on, get the official seal of approval from various organizations, and then we can move forward and start the process of letting bids, getting the specs put together. That's where our engineer, Midwestern Engineering, comes in. They do a lot of that work for us, and we're just taking it a step at a time, trying to scratch off as many things off the to-do list as possible.
That is definitely understandable in terms of entities such as government. There are a lot of protocols that one needs to abide by.
There is. There's protocol to follow. If we did this all just ourselves in-house, we'd have to do certain things. If we had state money, there would be other hoops to jump through. Because it's rural development, that's federal funding. So that's a whole other set of hoops to jump through. I mean, everybody has their guidelines that you have to follow. And we may do things exactly a certain way, but there may be an extra layer or two inserted in just because. And so we're following the process as best as we can. Our town attorney, Bill Schoenfeld, has done a great job of trying to keep everybody in their lane of traffic, as it were, moving this forward and start to blend things together, still running parallel tracks. But we are moving in the right direction, and hopefully in the next couple of 3 months, we'll see more activity coming up on this in terms of the specs, the bid process starting up, getting our financing completely aligned, because even though we're obligated for the money, we have to set up a separate account for that to be put into. There's reports and forms to fill out for that, because again, it's federal dollars that we have to make sure everything is copacetic there. So lots of things going on. Eventually it will all merge into one last push and get this project completed.
And that's the effectiveness of the town of Ferdinand, as with your guidance, as well as the council, as well as the city attorney, that brings every department in its awareness in every meeting that you do have, so that then later on you can definitely, like you said, have everyone on track. Well,
we try, and sometimes it's easier said than done, but that's the purpose of the town manager. In a certain extent, I'm sort of the hub between the council and what they want to do. The town attorney, he will contact me, reach out to council and bounce this off of them. I can reach out individually, he can as well, but sometimes it's easier for him to call me and say, can you talk to council about matter X? And then I reach out to each council person, give them an update on it so that they have some knowledge of it ahead of time from the next council meeting, so it's not a complete surprise. They have an idea of what the process is. They in turn can come to me and say, what's the process, what's the progress right now on the biosolids project? I can give them an update so they know what's going on, but instead of having to wait until each monthly meeting to get the supervisor report, they got the inside knowledge, or a little bit of knowledge ahead of time. Okay, we've gotten this step done, now we're working on the next step, and things like that. So I kind of work as a conduit, and then if they have suggestions for me to pass on either to the town attorney or to Roger, in this case, the wastewater superintendent, I can then reach out to Roger and say, council wants to know where are we with this or that. And some of it is our control, some of it falls into the hands of the engineers or someone else. So we can kind of keep better tabs on the process and not lots of loose ends that we only can tie up at the monthly meeting. And then if there's action that needs to be taken, we don't have to try to fast track something through at a council meeting. At the last meeting, concerning the rental of the farm property for our wet apply of the sludge, they went ahead and approved the action. Our attorney worked up the contract, and then instead of waiting until the June meeting to come back, we have this set up. Now can we do the paperwork? The paperwork is done. It's just a matter now of getting signatures on the contract, getting it notarized, and then we can move forward. So they're able to take some proactive steps on that, so we don't have to wait from meeting to meeting to meeting.
Yes.
In some things, you want to have those steps, just depending on the project. But on other things where time is at an essence, it's really valued on certain things, we're able to work ahead a little bit, because with the weather as it is, it's been tricky, not just for us to do our applying. The farmers they're tied up right now by the rainy weather as well. And about the time a field gets ready to prep for planting, it rains again. Farmers can't get in to do their thing. We can't get in to do our thing either. And at this point in time, we'll have a narrow window of some of our regular applying, and then the farmer's going to boot us off so he can actually plant his crop. Okay. But that's where the rental of this extra property is going to come into play. That becomes basically our property to do with as we want, and we'll be able to apply throughout the summer and fall and not be bound to the farmer's schedules as much, to make sure, okay, you've got until this day to get your stuff done and then move on so I can get out and plant my crop. Or we don't have to wait for the weather to clear for the farmer to harvest their crop before we can get in and do our fall application. We'll have that chunk of ground with which to work and basically be on our own time schedule. And then when the farmer gets done with the harvest time, and then we can get in and do our normal fall application to those properties and keep the normal process going.
That is definitely an effective mannerism in how to handle those things. And in terms of progress, you spoke about earlier, there is another progressive project that has been going on in regards of the Best Home Furnishing subsidiary that was approved to buy that land.
Yes, New, that's KNU, that we have to always phrase it that way, New LLC. It's a subsidiary of Best Home Furnishings. There was a small chunk of property, about 4 acres total, off of West 23rd Street and the bypass area near the Longy Fire Station. It was ground that was just sort of an open space. New, working through Best, they decided that would be a good place for them to locate their structure. We had to go through certain processes because the town was selling the property. We had to go through, do appraisal on the land from 2 appraisal companies, and then that averages out. That works for buying or selling, and we come up with the average cost. So that's the minimum that could be paid for the property. The same way as if we were wanting to buy some property, we would have to get 2 appraisals on the land and average it together. And that would be, in that case, the maximum that we could pay for it. So it's the same kind of process. But we worked very closely, our attorney Bill Schoenfeld and folks from Best/New worked on this to make sure that we were okay. I know the fire department had some concern on exactly where the boundary would be cut, because they wanted to have some space available for future growth. If they wanted to add a bay onto the fire station, that they would have room to work with. All of that was accommodated very easily. New and Best were happy to work with us on that. They still have a good chunk of space with which to construct the building. Later on this summertime, we will actually annex that into the town limits so we can provide all of the utilities that we possibly can to them. So that keeps that within the town, and it benefits them. They got sort of one-stop shopping when it comes to their utilities, and we're able to move that process forward as well. And looking forward to them finalizing a little bit better their plans for when they actually start to construct that building and what goes into it and the jobs that will be created from there. So we're trying to continue to grow the town as best we can, a little bite here, a little bite there, and just continue to move forward and be as progressive as we can.
Yes, I hear that there will be several jobs coming from that building itself.
Yes, and I think they're still finalizing the exact number, and once they get the design put together, then they'll have a better idea how many jobs will come into it and potential for some future growth. And I know that they're, with the expansion that Best Home Furnishings has done, the one warehouse building is pretty much completed. That's creating, I think, at least 20 new jobs at the beginning, with the potential for future growth as they shift a couple of lines, which they've kind of had scattered about, move them into one consolidated location and move that forward as well. So they're happy, they're growing we're happy because they're growing in Ferdinand.
Yes.
Same with Master Brand, with some of their expansion process, with new coming on board. We're happy with that. So it's still a very positive time. We're working on a lot of other things with housing, trying to make it easier for potential employees of these or any other company to move into Ferdinand, into the Du Bois County in general, try to bring those workers on board into the county, which again is a win-win. Our employers have workers, we get the tax benefits from them living in town, and then just the standard economic benefit of them coming to our local grocery and our local stores to spend. That money circulates through. So we're trying to make this as positive an experience as possible, moving and living in Ferdinand, working in Ferdinand, and attending our schools and all of that goes with that.
Absolutely, building within the community, but also remaining here and making it more elaborate community as well.
Yes, we're doing our best. I know since I've come on board, housing has been one of the top topics, and for a longest period of time, it was just we would talk a lot, but we weren't really seeing any forward action. Last year in 2015, Du Bois Strong kind of took the lead a little bit with a housing/work survey, and that clarified some topics for us and scratched some things off where we thought it was one way, it's actually an opposite way. And so we're trying to use that to our advantage. And our Economic Development Commission has been very active since we revitalized and restarted them a little over a year ago. They've been seeking properties with which developers could put some homes on, not necessarily great big massive subdivisions, but 3 or 4 homes or maybe an apartment complex, things of that nature where there's more housing for folks to move into until they transition into a more permanent facility or a structure. So we're working every way we can to make it as doable as possible. We're going to be having some meetings in the month of June where we hope to get maybe some better guidance from state level officials that they can guide us a certain way. What can the town do to move this process forward for a developer? And try to get some answers, and if it's in the box, it's in the box. If we have to think outside of the box, we'll go that route as well. If it's something that is feasible for the town to offer and to do, and we can be very flexible on how we approach it. If it benefits a developer or two coming in and starting to construct, we'll explore it as deep into the process as we can.
And that's absolutely a great way to grow the town of Ferdinand. And thank you so much for letting us know about the progress and its continuation, because it's not over. There's still a lot going on, and there's still a lot of progress that will continue.
We've made progress, but there's a lot more progress we want to see occur, especially this summer, and then get things going into the construction phase in this fall and winter time, and hopefully have everything wrapped up by this time next year. That's what we're shooting for.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Prisma.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us here on Conversations on Monday.